Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome? That belief that no matter how prepared you are, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how skilled you are, no matter how educated you are, that somehow you still don't belong in that position, in that place, in that space, at that table? Well, I have. Let me tell you about it. For this episode, join me and our oldest daughter, Gabrielle, as we discuss our own journeys through overcoming imposter syndrome. So,
Yes.
listen,
Thanks for having
um,
me today.
I'm so excited to have you because this is a conversation I don't think we've ever really had before. We sort of started talking about it a couple weeks ago, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Time is an illusion these days, but
Yeah.
um, and I just felt like, wow, this is something because I've been hearing more and more about it lately. So
Mm-hmm.
I really felt like it was time for me to share this on my podcast, on the podcast. And so let's just dive right in to imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what has that? Well, first of all, I'm going to read you the definition,
Okay.
sort of
Yeah,
one
that's
of
that's
the
fair.
official definitions that I saw. It says that imposter syndrome is a persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved.
Mm. Yeah, the
Yeah,
inability to believe that. Yeah. No,
a
that
persistent inability.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a good. I mean, honestly, we actually started this conversation on the last virtual gathering, or maybe it wasn't the last one, but it
Hmm.
was one of the virtual gatherings because we talked about how we were a group of, successful women who all had at some point felt or were feeling at that time like, oh, I don't, yeah, but I don't know, and da da da. But on paper, we all had achieved some level of education, some level of success in certain areas, but yet we were of different demographics, age, backgrounds, ethnicities, all those things were different, right?
Hmm.
And we all were kind of landing on that same space. So that's where I remember us having like our first group conversation of it. And then,
Hmm.
like you said, it came up a few weeks ago. But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, and I wonder if it's like a Western perspective coming from this space of you always having to strive because you're not good enough. Is it how we're socialized in education and religion, things like that? But it's definitely something that I have felt, but I no longer feel. And maybe we could talk about it, but like from that interview that I was telling you I was watching, you want me to
Hmm.
talk about that? Okay.
Hmm.
Um, the Oprah and Quinta Brunson interview that I watched. It's an older interview, but I watched it a couple weeks ago. And Oprah basically asked her, like, have you ever felt like imposter syndrome? And she was like, no. And Oprah was like, I never did either, because she was like, and Quinta was like, it feels well earned, because they were talking about the success, I think, of season 2 of Abbott Elementary. And she's in her early 30s, so a little bit younger, but Oprah was saying she remembered her success coming at that time. And
Mm.
for her, but overall, there's no room for the imposter syndrome when like, oh wait, no, I know what I'm doing. And the people who maybe should have imposter syndrome because they just freestyling, they don't have it. So but when they said it like that, I was like, okay, that's a shift, because it's well earned. It's for the time that you've put in. It's for but sometimes we're in those environments where that's never acknowledged. It's like, no, you keep working, and you still didn't do that. So when do we decide within ourselves that it's well earned? And then I think that was a shift for me. And again, it just happened a few weeks ago, after watching that. So that's just kind of been my new wave of releasing imposter syndrome, because it shows up, we're planning, certain events and doing things that are brand new. And it's just like, who am I to do that? But like, who am I not to? Like, no. I've been in this, like I'll be saying that to you, like you've been in this work. We've been in, doing the things for all this time.
Yeah.
And what if you just started, yesterday, if you still are qualified, or your heart is in the right place, it's well earned, and go forth, because that's what this time I feel like is calling for. Is not for that, like, oh, I'm unsure. Like, no, people need a clear plan so they know what's up, or how to support or how to follow. So
Yeah.
that's just kind of been the things I've been processing.
No, you said some things in there.
That interview had me going. Okay.
I need to go back and watch it again. I watched
It was
it
so good.
at first. I think that for me, and even probably the reason why I didn't even recall it from one of our last virtual gatherings, is because I hadn't really fully wrapped my brain around it yet.
Yeah.
You know, the whole it's the reason why it's a syndrome is because you are not the imposter.
Mm-mm.
So the person who is qualified is the one who feels like the imposter.
Yes. Yes.
So it took me a minute to sort of wrap my mind around the irony of that.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think also now is I'm just finally getting to the place of really dealing with it, really addressing it, and
Right.
how it shows up in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so because for me, when it comes to things like this, I need to be able to have the space, the mental space, and to be able to really deal with it, really um lean into it, I guess is
Mm-hmm.
the word I'm looking for. Um and so I'm just now at that place of being
Yeah.
able to do that.
Like you said in the definition, it's a persistent thing. So it's not like it just came out of nowhere. And again, going back to that conversation, we all were at different stages in our careers or wherever, and everybody landed on that same thing of like, oh, that's how I feel too. Like, oh, like it didn't matter if you was 20 years in or two. Like, so that persistent, like you said, you don't even necessarily notice it because it may have been there for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And I think that sort of goes to your point of what you were saying is it or asking the question, is it a Western concept? Because for us all to be feeling it, because I can look at myself and my own personal journey,
Mm-hmm.
and I know I was sort of looking at it as I grew up with the perception that my value and my worth was tied into my performance,
Right.
but anything less than perfection
Yeah.
was unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
So then that means I would always feel like an imposter,
Right.
because I'm never going to be, do everything perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sort of a no-win cycle,
Yeah.
a
That
no-win
just keeps you going.
situation. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I was kind of looking at it. But looking at it the way you phrased it, everybody didn't necessarily have that same experience growing up,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
internalize that message as a child. So then, or in some cases, if they did that have something to do with our whole westernized mentality and concept,
Can you
you know?
clarify that part?
So it, even our parents and grandparents and the adults in our lives, their mindsets and how they
Right. Yeah.
conceptualize things being
Yeah.
informed by this sort of Western thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
maybe,
And yeah.
oh, I was just going to say, maybe it's sort of a combination of all of that.
Yeah. Life experience. And also we're thinking about it, at least for me, when imposter syndrome comes up initially, I'm thinking career wise, but
Yeah.
it's also like, what about just in life, imposter
Yeah.
syndrome with being, I don't know, like a spouse or, a good friend, just like I wonder what other ways it shows up. But like you said, it
Mm.
touched a nerve in that particular conversation. And that was like what we would consider a pretty diverse group.
Yeah.
Um, and then it all seemed like it led to this space of feeling unfulfilled. But then
Mm.
again, watching on the interview, like it was just the matter of factness of like, no, me either. Nope, it was well deserved. And I know they were talking about more about their career, but I wonder how, like how we talk about those shifts, if a small shift, let's say, with recognizing it's well deserved in your career, how that then shows up in other areas where maybe we felt like an imposter. Um,
Mm-hmm.
to the social experiment. Like, what other ways will it show up?
Exactly. So I have two questions with that. One is, what are some of the other ways that it shows up in your life? And the other thing was, you said that led to a feeling unfulfilled. And how did it lead to that?
That was just the feeling that I got from the conversation we had um back with the virtual gathering, because it
Mm-hmm.
seemed, and again, that's just my perception, that the imposter syndrome then led to us as a collective maybe not going for
Mm-hmm.
the big opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I got
um
you.
So that's again just my kind of observation, but like I always say, like I play it medium. Like I've never played it small, but I've
Wow.
never played it to the outside world. I maybe I have, but for me as a person, I know that imposter syndrome. Again, let's just go back to career wise.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things I've not done
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, ooh, who am I to ask for that much money? Or who am I to say that I can be in that space? But again, when I saw the look on their faces when they was just like, nope, not me. Or maybe, for those people who don't have imposter syndrome and know that they are well deserved, but they don't feel comfortable saying it out loud because, the environment is that you should shrink back. So
Mm-hmm.
how will you also free other people to be like, hey, me either. Nope, I know I belong here. So I just think about it from that perspective too. Again, just how can one person being liberated then liberate the other people around them?
Absolutely. No, that's a really good question. I think you kind of answered both of them a little bit, and we'll come back to that second question. But
Yeah.
um, no, I think so, because honestly, I think back when I initially watched that interview, it seemed and sounded so foreign to me for
Yeah.
them to say that. I don't even think
Yeah.
I could connect to it.
Yeah.
And like you said, we can be in some spaces where that actually sounds arrogant, or
Hmm.
like, well, what do you mean? But it- I'm coming to the place of realizing it's not arrogant to know your worth. It's not
Hmm.
arrogant to know who you are.
No.
and to know what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to know what you carry.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about religion, and I think a big part of it for me was that is that so afraid of showing confidence because
Mm-hmm.
don't want it don't want to be arrogant
Right.
or
Or take the shine from God or anybody else. Yeah.
yeah, or prideful or don't want
Right.
to be seen that way by other
Right.
people. And
Right.
so, oh, I can think of so many. I'll give you an example. I remember when I was in undergrad and I'm a public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah.
as you are. But I remember in one of the classes I was taking, we had to give a presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so comfortable in that space and so comfortable. It came so easy to me, even just to prepare my
Yeah.
presentation. But the rest of the people in my group, because I think we were like in groups of 4, the rest of the people in my group were so uncomfortable with public
Mm-hmm.
speaking and so nervous and so, that I didn't want to make them feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know me, because I want everybody just to feel wonderful and loved and supported and the best versions of themselves at all times.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel comfortable being as comfortable and confident
Mm-hmm.
as I really was. And so I did, like you said, played it medium. I shrank myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor even noted this
Yeah.
in the notes to me afterwards. I sort of pulled myself back and I sort of made myself smaller
Yeah.
so that they would feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done that so much. And that wasn't even, we weren't even talking about career wise. That was in an educational space,
Yeah.
I've done that so many times. And in my attempt to make people feel so comfortable, people end up devaluing and
Mm-hmm.
undervaluing me.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get a false sense of, oh, well, she really don't know what she talking about. I know
Right.
more than her. And I'd be thinking to myself, oh, no, not really, because,
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time, or I've studied this for a long time, or,
Right.
this ain't my first rodeo
It's
kind of
well
thing.
deserved or well earned. Yeah.
But just
Yeah.
not used to thinking of it in that way or using that language, using that
Yeah.
type of language.
Yeah. I mean, and again, society thrives on some of that too. Is, everybody. If everybody asking for $60 million, that ain't in the budget. So if y'all
Right.
gonna work for $2, keep feeling undeserving because the budget say we can't pay everybody. So even from that
Yes.
perspective, but like you said, and again, it brings me to, like, I'm just thinking about, like, the poem Our Deepest Fear. It's like our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, but that we are powerful beyond measure.
Mm,
And then, like, as we let our light shine, basically, we're liberating and encouraging. That part's not, that's, paraphrasing, but
mhm.
like,
Yeah.
so, and also, if what is it to not shrink back, but then to shine, because we've seen that too. Like, it might be something as a kid, you know, so and so ran and jumped off of what, and then everybody's like, "Ooh, y'all could do that? Okay, I could do it too." So it also works to the other extent of, like, "Oh, so and so was confident at the spelling bee or whatever. Let me get up there and try it too." So what is
Right.
it to even think like, nah, like, I'm gonna do this so that they can know it's possible, and not
Right.
everybody's gonna get with that, but
Mm.
Our playing it small, yes, does not serve the world. So,
Wow.
um, that's
No,
again from our deepest fear. Like, yeah, that's
well, that's an excellent point. Because I think mine stemmed from always trying to fit in, always wanting to
hmm
fit in.
yeah, same.
And so, but never even thinking about, well, what if I just go up there and be me?
hmm
Because this is what I do. I do this, even though
Yeah,
I wasn't doing it a lot at the time, but I just knew that
yeah,
I was built for this. Um, and uh and then who knows, they might have, some of them might have come up to me and asked for pointers, or can you help
yeah,
me with, you
yeah,
just, just us showing up as ourselves, what that, but I never, that thought never even crossed my mind.
yeah. And it's recent because that's not necessarily what, like you said, the goal is fit in, don't rock the boat. You're like amazing or a rebel. Like it can go either way if you do all of that. But what I feel like is kind of just a shift in some areas, in society. When again we just talk about career, like recognizing like some people gonna get it, some people aren't. But after a while, how does the imposter syndrome or playing it small or even medium, you know, impact our individual lives, but also thinking from a broader perspective, like take me out of it for my purpose. Like who's
Mhm.
not getting what they need because I'm scared to say something, and that's a big thing to say,
Yes.
that the minute you say that, you be like, never mind. Um, but it doesn't have to be, again, going back to that interview, it was so simple with how they said it
Mhm.
that it didn't seem overwhelming. It was just
Mm.
very much like,
Okay.
like it wasn't no extra sauce on it. It wasn't that life has been, it was just like, no, like
Just
it
matter
feels,
of fact.
yeah, like no, it felt well earned. Me too. I worked hard. I got to this point. These were the results. Like, um,
Wow.
so it just stuck with me and it reminded me just my last celebrity note. But again, seeing it out front, then it makes it possible for me. Like I remember it was another interview
Mm.
long time ago. And it was like J-Lo, and it was back when she was playing Selena, and
Mm.
somebody had asked her, like, because that was her first major role, and they were like, aren't you nervous? Aren't you scared? And she was like, honey, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Like,
Mm.
you right. You didn't put your time in, you'd have worked hard. So when the opportunity comes, again, now if you was just freestyling, and I've done my share of that too, but if you was just freestyling, and you don't have no qualifications, you don't know nothing of what, okay, maybe you can be a little nervous or feel like an imposter. But if you've
Right.
done the work in whatever setting and space, or you're open to learn things like that, like just let it come, and you're not an imposter, and there's nothing to prove, like you said, being yourself in these
Mhm.
spaces.
Yep.
And when you're doing that, there's nothing to prove. And
I think that's the big part of it, is so often we feel like we have to prove
yeah,
ourselves.
absolutely.
We have to prove that we belong there. Like that
Yeah,
definition said, that our success is deserved. Our success is earned, has been
yeah,
earned.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, even getting out of that hole. And you know what else too? This just came to me. That is false humility.
Mm,
Thinking that is humility, but it's actually false humility, because if you have prepared for this, you are prepared, you put your, like they say, you put your time in, you've gotten the education, you have the experience, you have prepared for this, then you do deserve it.
hmm.
It's what you prepared for.
Right. It's
It's
the
what you went through the qualification process for.
right. But and also, let's also make space for being a Black woman, especially.
Yes.
Even on that call, it was not only Black women. but there was a majority of us on that call in America where you are, they want you to second guess and
Yes.
will question you sometimes, and between microaggressions, things like those are all very still real and present. Um,
Absolutely.
those are also things that can help you, or that can aid you in feeling like you're an imposter, and that's another set of skills. So again, coming back to, there's
Yeah.
nothing to prove, which is not necessarily easy. Some people it's easy for. Some people like, y'all gonna get what y'all get, and that's it. But like you said, however you were brought up, whatever that looks like. So that's really just been my intention for on my birthday. That was what I said would be the theme of, I mean, hopefully the rest of my life, but especially this year, of like nothing to prove.
I felt like that was the perfect place to stop for part one of our conversation. And I will share part two of our conversation on overcoming imposter syndrome in 2 weeks on episode 15 of the podcast. So I hope you have enjoyed and been enriched by the conversation, because I feel like even when we just talk about things, we bring them into the light. We bring them from the non-conscious into the conscious, and then we can turn them into actions. So until next time, take care.